This is a video about measurement and significant figures. So if we have a graduated cylinder seen here, our graduated cylinder is a tool, or we can call it an instrument or a device that we use in lab to measure liquids. It's a tool that's used to measure liquids pretty accurately. If we assess the scale here, and we notice that in this area where it's boxed in, you've got 15 here and 20 here, then you've got these markings that we call increments. Sometimes they're referred to as tick marks. So the first thing you want to do is you want to see what is your scale on your measuring device go up by. So what are these increments we see here? So we've got the 15 and the 20, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 increments before we hit the 20, and that would be 5. So we got 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So this means then that our scale goes up in the ones place. When taking a measurement, you want to make sure then that you measure to the bottom of this curved line called the meniscus. Careful not to shortchange that and measure in any of these areas that I'm pointing at. Instead, make sure you're at the center, the lowest point possible. So now that we've decided that our scale, goes up by ones, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. The next thing we want to make sure we understand is what is the unit on the scale? So this is a milliliter. Milli referring to thousands of a liter, right? So a milliliter is a very common unit for our graduated cylinders. Now that we know that, we can then take a measurement by taking a reading, and your reading then needs to have all the places that you're certain about on the scale, and you get one estimate. So if I know for sure that this goes up in the ones place, then my estimate is going to be in my tenths place. And so that's where I want to take my reading to, is to the tenths place. So in this instance here, I'm certain that this is 21, and then I know that's 22, and so my reading is between 21 and 22. And so I look here at the bottom, and so maybe I'm going to estimate something like 21.6, maybe 21.5. Both would be acceptable. So again, you want to look at the bottom of that meniscus, right? And so you could see here in my reading, I went ahead and went one place beyond what my scale represented. And that's how you take a reading. You get to have all the places you're certain about. So again, I was certain that this was beyond 21. So I have that certain. And you get to have one uncertain digit, we call this, or we call it the estimate. So make sure that your reading goes one place beyond your scale. Next, let's take a look at this ruler seen here. See if I can zoom out. There we go. Okay, so this ruler has the word centimeter written here. Sometimes you'll see the ruler has the word millimeter written, though it looks the same way. And what that's referring to are, again, our increments are in millimeters, but the ruler itself is actually measuring the bigger part in a centimeter. So from 0 to 100 is a centimeter, but the increments in between represent the milliliters. So if we notice here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And so that right there then lets me know that we're going up by the tenths. And the easiest way to do this would be to actually write it out for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and take this paper and say if this is 1, then this next marking here is 1.1, then 1.2, then 1.3. So if we keep going along and we look at that, 1.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.92. So we can see that this is going up in the tenths place. So every increment is going up by 1/10, right? Remember a second ago when we were doing this example, this scale was different. But we said the rule is you get to have all the places you're certain about and one estimate. So if I know that the entire scale, I'm certain to the tenths place, then where would my estimate be? It'd be in the hundredths place, right? So if we take a look at a reading, let's go ahead and look at this. I'm going to line this up on the 0, get that there, and then let's zoom in so you can see. Okay. So in this example right here, I noticed that I for sure know that this reading is 1 and it's beyond 1. And so I got 1.1, 1.2. So I'm certain about 1.2. But remember, if this goes up 1/10, I get one place beyond. So maybe this is 1.22 or 1.23, or again, maybe 1.21 even. It's my estimated place, my uncertain digit. So I can be a little bit different in that area as long as it's decently close. But remember, we said always make sure that your unit is reflected on your measurement at the end, so we know what scale you're using. Let's go ahead and do another one that might be a little bit complicated or tricky. So I've got this measurement seen here at the top, and I notice that it goes from 0 and it lands directly on the 1 marking right there. So the question then becomes, to what place should I read this to? Well, remember we said you don't want to just jump ahead and say that this is 1 centimeter, because you haven't properly reflected the scale. So here are some options. Do we think this is 1 milliliter, 1.0 milliliter, 1.00 milliliter, or 1.000 milliliters? Well, remember, if you've been listening, then you know that the rule is you get to have one place beyond what your scale is. So I look at my increments again, and I say that this goes up right in the 10th place. So we know that this does not even show us the 10th place. This one shows us a 10th place, which is great, but remember, you get to have one beyond what your scale goes up by. So this rule goes up in the 10th place, it's 1/10, so that doesn't give us the estimate. This one's the correct answer, so it gives us what the scale goes up by and then the one uncertain digit that you get, your estimate. This one went way too far. You can't have two uncertain places. So my guess is 1.00 milliliters, or I should say my reading is 1.00 milliliters. So now with that being said, one more time, so here's my measurement. So I'm certain about that place, I'm certain about this place, and I get to have one uncertain place, and you have to have it, and a unit at the end, and that's how you take a measurement. We call all of these digits here, right, these measurements, they're also called digits or figures. We call all of these digits significant, including the uncertain digit. So that's a new word for us. These are called significant figures. So let's take a look at this. So significant figures are all of your certain digits that you found on your scale plus the one uncertain digit. It is also significant. So in order to take a good measurement, you've got to have all the significant digits or figures, that means the same thing. Let's also talk then about how you can think of the rules. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to assess the scale on your instrument. We also call it a device or a tool, right? So remember we said look at the unit, determine the increments of your instrument, and always include one estimate beyond your scale's increment. Lastly, sometimes we aren't measuring things and rather we're counting things. So in this example here, if I say how many markers do I have, I'm not going to use an instrument. Instead, I actually can just use the technique of saying 1, 2, 3. That is counted numbers. Counted numbers don't use a scale, therefore there's no uncertainty. I'm actually very certain that there's 3 of them, and so we say then how many significant figures? It's actually considered to be infinite, sig fig, so that's our infinite sign right there. Infinite meaning it is 3 markers, I'm certain, so really it could technically be 3.000000 with infinite zeros going on because there's no uncertainty that there's 3. So we don't actually give it a number, we just say it's infinite, or we use this sign right here. So the purpose of our significant figures and measuring today was to be careful not to make an estimate that is more precise than our measuring tool allows. So when we use these measuring devices or these tools, the rule is you're only allowed one digit further than the level of precision that is inherent in the instrument.